And we are live, getting started here on Vlogmas 9, a very, very special topic tonight that I am really excited about after a very difficult week. Excited, though, about this topic because we are talking about what was under the tree many years ago. Do you remember what was under your Christmas tree? And you know, the folks that follow our programs here at Channel Bill Marion, you guys know that let's just face it, our youth is adequately represented on my channel. If you look at our graph of viewers, we have a nice bell curve, equally distributed somewhat, you know, people and peeps and stuff. But we have a long discussion because we're covering all ages. Big Frog, you're getting ahead of ourselves because Star Wars toys come much later. Before Star Wars toys, the best toys, by the way, I'm in total agreement with you. I mean, really, was there adequate toys before Star Wars? I say no. However, that being said, we're going to go back in time to toys of yesterday, like way yesterday, not just like day before yesterday or yesterday in that song yesterday kind of meaning. No. We're taking the time machine so far back. Jessica Harris says, me, Annabelle, Justin, and Mimi say hi. Hey, good to see you guys. You guys looking forward to tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be great. Really excited about tomorrow. It's going to be awesome. If you can get to church tomorrow, wherever you live, get to church. It's going to be great wherever you're at. We're talking about toys. We're talking about toys of yesterday. Now, I need to make sure that everyone understands this channel is not a kids channel. This video is not made for kids. This channel is made for adults, people over 18. Not that we have anything rated in such a way. However, with the YouTube situation, we want to make sure that we're protecting our young people. So I'm going to say this right off the bat. This is not a kids channel. That being said, let's talk about toys. It sounds crazy. That being said, let's talk about toys. Let's just face it. We live in an era now where grown men buy Star Trek toys and Star Wars toys. Am I right? You know who I'm talking to. I don't know specifically who I'm talking to, but there are grown men. I've seen them buying, you know, your Star Wars toys, and they may never get it out of the box, but they have the new Millennium Falcon or the new edition or whatever, and they're totally into it. Strong's Adventures, Billy, what's up? Hey, my man, good to see you. Been bragging on you yesterday, or I guess it was last night. We had our last live stream, and I was talking about your channel last night. It's good stuff, and which is a great segue, Billy, because the first thing that we're talking about tonight was a groundbreaking tool for young ladies. So the first toy that we're going to talk about right now is for women. And it was, and I don't mean that in a sexist way. I'm saying that when it was made, it was for women. And that is the Easy Bake Oven. Yes, we're going way back in time to the early 1960s. What's up, Gary? How you doing, man? So we're going way back to the early 1960s. And they made the Easy Bake Oven, and it was a Christmas favorite. It was a Christmas hit, the Easy Bake Oven. And it remained a hit year after year. It was kind of sexist, okay? It was because, you know, it was women in the kitchen and all that kind of stuff. And so, of course, the little girls would get the Easy Bake Oven to be like mommy, who was, you know, who'd been through the Great Depression and everything else, or children of people who had gone through all that. And they were traditional. They had traditional roles in the house. And so it's crazy that people these days have complained about one of the greatest toys ever made. Young ladies love this toy, and young men love this toy too. They just don't tell anybody, and that's why I'm going to share it today. My aunt, who's only 18 months older than me, love her. She's like, she's my aunt, but we were close as brother and sister, cousins, whatever, very close. And she got an Easy Bake Oven, and we made this chocolate stuff from the Easy Bake Oven, and I thought it was great. It was fun. You get to mix stuff and a light bulb. If you had, by the way, if you had an Easy Bake or you know someone with an Easy Bake, let us know in the comments. That's going to be interesting part about tonight. So the Easy Bake Oven had like a light bulb in it, and that's how the food heated, and it would get hot. You know, the food would get hot, but it was awful. It tasted terrible. There you go. But it was cool because you did it as a kid, and I think parents as time went by, it's almost easier just to let your kid help in the kitchen than to go through all the mess with the Easy Bake, because let's just face it, the Easy Bake is messy and you still have to have adult supervision and all that stuff. But it was still a hit for many years, and it made a lot of money. Big Frog cooking. By the way, I'm going to totally Casey Neistat these glasses. You have no idea. If you know who Casey Neistat is, you'll understand what I'm saying. It's gonna be different. I'm telling you. Stay tuned for that. Big Frog says, I have used an oven before. I'm assuming you're talking about an Easy Bake. That's great. I've waited for a restaurant to like incorporate some type of Easy Bake oven that's not really an Easy Bake, but like you can see through the kitchen and it has Easy Bake on the side of it. That'd be funny. Juan Thomas, hello, my man. What's up? Strong's Adventure says, my sisters had one. And yes, that was some nasty little cakes. They were nasty. It didn't taste good at all. It was gross. It was very gross. So we go from the Easy Bake, and just a few years later, you get G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe revolutionized toys for young boys. It changed everything because G.I. Joe was so hip and so cool and so amazing. It was like G.I. Joe, and it's very, very masculine. It's like who America. It was all kinds of America kind of stuff. And so G.I. Joe was a big hit. After G.I. Joe, you get into the game Operation. Just a few Christmases later, you get the game Operation. And the game Operation, if you've never played it, it'll give you a heart attack. I mean, as an older person, I got a shake in my hand. I've had it since I was a kid. Not a shake. Not like, it's just a steady hand kind of thing. And so I'm terrible at Operation. Plus, I don't have the patience. I'm terrible having the patience to play the game Operation. I normally like have a heart attack. After Operation, Twister became a big game. I was pretty decent at Twister. I was flexible up until, 2012, 2013. My flexibility just went out the door. But after Twister, the game Battleship. Now, you've never lived until you've played Battleship with like family members and stuff. It's a lot of fun. Battleship, though, there's a strategy there where you can win, and it gets kind of monotonous. They updated the game in the 80s, and it became electronic, and I always thought that was really cool. And then they made the movie Battleship, which was stupid and dumb and not really worth your time or even me mentioning. I wish I hadn't mentioned it now because it's a terrible movie. But the movie Battleship, if you like Battleship, let us know here in the chat because I'm telling you, I thought it was just ridiculous. So you have Battleship, and then Hot Wheels came on the scene. And Hot Wheels, and of course later Matchbox cars. I think every kid goes through that phase where they do the car thing, the collecting. I had a lot of Matchbox cars and a lot of Hot Wheels. After Hot Wheels, you had these things. Now, my parents were wonderful at Christmas as far as giving gifts. I always had lots of gifts and all that stuff. And with having lots of gifts, you would think I would have had all of the main gifts that every kid gets because, they're popular. And I did have some of those. But my mom and dad were really good at buying excellent gifts that weren't mainstream, but were incredibly entertaining and enjoyable. And you learn something. They got me a robotics set one year. And I wanted to talk about this because robotics, I don't know if any of you guys remember robotics, but it had little motors and like these cranes where you could basically build with these 9-volt, I don't know what the voltage was on it, come to think of it. It took a bunch of deep batteries, big batteries. And the motors would spin and you could create things. The coolest part about it is you were creating with your imagination. You didn't have to do what was on the box. And quickly, being the creative, crazy guy that I was, I threw the instructions away and just created my own stuff. And somehow or another, I plugged it to the power in the house. I did. I plugged it to the power in the house, the little motors, and it was great. It burned up the motors, but then it burned the side of the wall. And I didn't get in trouble for that. It was just like the robotics changed after that. I realized I could create a monster, but things like that. The next thing on the list here is a chemistry set. They became really popular in the 60s to get your kid a chemistry set. And I understand why. It's entertaining. It's a lot of fun. Learning does not have to be stale, and not every toy has to just be entertaining. It can also be a learning experience. And so I really enjoyed robotics, and a lot of kids back in the 60s enjoyed their chemistry set. After the chemistry set, do you remember the toy Light Bright? Yes, Light Bright. It usually had like this white plastic, and then you put these dark pieces of paper on top of it and these little plastic pegs that you push into it. And it had a light inside of it, and it lit up the pegs, man. And you can make designs and stuff. It was psychedelic, but you were a kid, so you really didn't know what psychedelic was. But still, and if you did, that'd be really bad. Still, Light Bright was cool. It was a cool toy. Even when I was a kid, people were talking Light Bright, and you'd see the commercials on television. Then you have these things that, according to the internet, According to the internet, you had these things, they're called space balls. Yes. And it was a bouncy. It was a bouncy you bounce on. You get on it and you bounce around. You know what I'm talking about? It's like an inflated ball with a little handle. Boing, 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 boing. Those were awesome. Can we say that those were awesome? You know, the hula hoop made you have to work. And I know they sold 10 billion of them, and it was a national craze. Hula hoops. Everybody wanted their hula hoop. But here's what I'm saying about the hula hoop. It took work. I could hula hoop. There was a season in my life that I could hula hoop. But for the most part, I can't hula hoop. Okay, not anymore. If I tried to hula hoop, you're talking about bones cracking. You're talking about things being misaligned. You're talking about a hospital visit, sure as the world. But the bouncy ball, you worked your legs, and maybe a little bit of your abdomen, but you know, it was working for you. You bounced around, you got something out of it. I liked it better. Let me catch up here in the comments. Strong's Adventures. Billy says, I have a Battleship game on my phone. That is awesome. I didn't even know they had that. I'm going to have to download it tonight. That is really cool. Juan Thomas says, I played the old Battleship. I did too, the two plastic boxes. You had the blue box and the red box, and they were separate. Yeah, I remember playing. I played the old school. I played one of the first editions of it at my granny and Paul's house in Middle Tennessee, and over in McMinnville, Tennessee at the farm. I was very young, but I remember it. Juan Thomas, Big Frog and Cooking says, Alvin wanted a hula hoop. Me, I want a hula hoop. That's a great song, isn't it? It's very sweet. But again, who wants a hula hoop? I know some of you are probably hula hoop champions, whether you're in the chat room now or you watch later, and hula hoop is great. It's cardiovascular. It strengthens muscle. Man, I hate a hula hoop. They're demonic. They're evil. Strong's Adventure says, he's just laughing there at the last comment. Let's look at the next toy here on the list. Again, we're working our way through the 60s right now. The very next is the card game Uno. I thought Uno was older than the 1960s, but this was the craze back in the mid-60s, mid to late 60s, the game Uno. If you want to see my wife in her most competitive moments, just get the Uno cards out. It gets crazy up in here, man. It gets crazy. Uno has entertained my family on more than one occasion. It's evolved so much now that it's kind of like a common card game. So a lot of people, just have an old deck laying around and you play with that deck. But during that time period, it was a pretty awesome gift to get at Christmas. So I can see that. That makes sense. The next one makes sense too. Technology just kept improving. Moore's Law was in effect. Technology was doubling every single year or 2 years, whatever it is. And the next thing that comes on the scene that everybody wanted were walkie-talkies. You would think that would have come out years before, but no, the technology had gotten affordable to make toys from what was revolutionary just 25, 30 years before. Remember in World War I, the radio was not that reliable. By World War II, it was more reliable, but not as reliable, of course, as it is today by any stretch of the imagination. But technology kept improving to where, hey, walkie-talkies, we can make them for kids. And I went through probably 4 or 5 sets of walkie-talkies. They always broke because the metal antenna, come on, somebody that's in their 40s, they always put that little antenna with, and it wasn't until later that they went to the rubbery kind of antenna that doesn't break. But that one that goes just like this, you got to make the sound. You got to make that sound. And you could whip people with it, which was bad. Don't do that because you could leave a mark, but it would break off. And so that was always what happened on walkie-talkies every time. Trying to go to the next list here. Forgive me. It'll be just a second. It says the next one here is the Tonka Toy Truck. And this was in 1974. The Tonka Toy Truck. I didn't understand this one. I know Tonka is awesome. I had Tonka toys. In fact, if you had a lot of Tonka action figure kind of thing, it was fun to mix them up with the Star Wars people because they kind of made extras and bad guys if you had Star Wars people. They were great. But the Tonka truck was one of the biggest hits of 1974. Strong's Adventure says the antennas made good swords too. Exactly. But they'll put your eye out, man. After the Tonka truck toy, there's this story. You can actually look this up on YouTube when you get time. There was a craze in 1975 about a pet rock. The pet rock. Has anybody ever seen anything on this? This was crazy. Great marketing. It was the idea of having a pet rock. I'm going to let you look it up. I won't go into detail, but I'm going to tell you what it was. It was a major con is what it was. I'm going to get you. You're going to buy a rock. You're going to pet it and take care of it and all this stuff. I mean, there's a story behind it, but it's a rock. You got to be dumb as a rock to buy a rock. I mean, I don't get that. Strong's Adventure says, yep, I had a pet rock. And Gary said, I loved my Tonka. So Gary was loving his Tonka toys. Juan Thomas says, I remember the rock. It's just crazy. I can't see myself going, I'm going to buy my kid a rock this year. I thought, like, for Santa, it was bad. It's like a lump of coal was bad. So you're going to buy a rock? I don't get that. Gary Millwood says, proof that people will buy anything. Oh, wait, there's more on this list. You are exactly right. Another a craze was the game Connect 4. Connect 4, it's like, because you play it upright. There's some strategy there. There's some interesting thought that goes on there for about 30 seconds, maybe less. If you're averaging to like about 30 seconds, and you got the game kind of figured out. But in 1977, as my good buddy here, Big Frog Barbecue and Cooking, mentioned just a few minutes ago, in 1977, the toy market was cornered by a man by the name of George Lucas. George Lucas understood marketing toys. He understood that process, and he did something amazing. When Star Wars came out, he licensed the toys, the likeness of Luke Skywalker, the likeness of Han Solo, and he made billions and billions of dollars. And we contributed to that because Star Wars toys were the greatest. Yeah, I know that G.I. Joe was still in the market. And G.I. Joe was cool because, like, the legs and knees and elbows could bend everywhere. And that was kind of nice because, it didn't matter. Star Wars was cooler, way cooler. The spaceships, everything else, it was just awesome. And they seemed to get better and better from 97 until The Last Skywalker, because that movie was terrible. We all agree on that. And if we don't, it's okay. I love you, but you're wrong. The Last Skywalker was absolutely, no, is it The Last Skywalker? I think that's the name of it. It was the Last Skywalker in the first Star Wars movie that was terrible. And then toys, the Star Wars toys finally just plummeted. Nobody wanted the toys anymore because the movie was terrible. And it just kind of flopped. The Star Wars market just kind of flopped. But up until then, think about that, from 77 to 2000 and whenever, 2015, 16, 17, 2017, I don't remember. I think it was 17. Until that movie came out, Star Wars was king of the toys. It was just king. And they were awesome. I mean, there have been many battles. My son has actually more Star Wars stuff, and he took care of his stuff. He wasn't like me. I painted my stuff. My action figures were painted red, and I do different things, to make it was a battle. So I would be creative and tear arms off and stuff and be brutal. But my son takes immaculate care of his Star Wars toys. He's got a lot. And he's looked at me before because he inherited all of my toys. I gave him because I'd saved my toys, but they just weren't in good shape. And he's always griping at me. He's like, why did you not take care of these toys? Like he's a dad or something. I'm like, I'm sorry, Dad. But I don't know. I looked at him. I said, because I played with them. We were different back then. I had a couple of friends that they would keep certain toys in a box and things like that. But most of our friends were about the same. You're taping firecrackers to your store. You're in a war. These action figures are in a war. You're in the sandbox, man. That's how you looked at it. Hey, man, if you guys have got to participate in this a little bit, I'm having a hard time because these glasses aren't quite right. So it's like I'm going to have to ditch them for right now, I think. Oh, well. I'm ditching the glasses. I've got to get another pair because these don't quite do it. So if you agree with me on the Star Wars stuff, you got to tell me. The next game that came out was called Simon the next year. Simon. Do you guys remember this? It was a circle. It had lights on it on every side, and it would light up, and you had to hit it. That game, that Christmas, was huge. And if you think about this, because, Gary, you were talking earlier about people would buy anything. So right, because this game, there's nothing to it. It's just a response kind of thing, and then you could actually cheat. It's just I can't believe it was like a toy of the year kind of deal, but it was. The next year, a revolution took place with the game Atari. Now, there are better videos by far that will explain some amazing things that I'm going to try to explain now. So I want to tell you this now. If you're interested at all in what I'm about to explain, you need to do some surfing on YouTube and watch some experts talk about it, because that's what I did to get this information. When Atari came out, and we'll get to Nintendo and all that stuff later, it was pretty much played equally by men and women, or boys and girls rather, and men and women. The first time I saw an Atari, I was in Germany. I think I was 4 years old. And this guy was playing, not Missile Command, but and not Asteroid. I think it was Space Invaders. or no, it wasn't. The Space Invaders wasn't out. It was it was Pong. It was Pong. And that was the first time I saw Atari, and my dad was mesmerized. I'll never forget that. It was a bunch of grown men in there. It was a military base with a bunch of grown men, and they were, it was like a Christmas party kind of thing. And this guy and this other guy, they were playing Pong, and it was amazing. Everybody was like, "Oh, look at that!" Atari revolutionized everything, and when it came out, both men and women, they played it equally. It was equally distributed, but some things changed. Some things changed. Yes, Strongs, I'm getting to that. Absolutely. Atari did kill, or excuse me, E.T., the game E.T. did kill Atari. It wasn't just that E.T. game, though. That was the final blow. It also had to do with the saturation of video games in the market. But what I found interesting is that decisions were made later on due to where these consoles were placed in toy stores. Okay, I found out through these documentaries and stuff on YouTube that they had to make a decision where to put the Atari, and they started putting it in the boy section. So where you had a market, think about it, you've got men and women in that market. You've eliminated women from that market. Well, guess what? That's not a good idea, because you've just eliminated 50+% of the population that would buy the product. And so for the next many, many years, males dominated that market. Now, listen, I'm not trying to get into the all identity politics and all that nonsense. That we don't do that on this channel at all. It's just not what we talk about. However, it is interesting. It was just a bad idea. It's one of those things where you look and say, why didn't Walmart just put it like in the middle of the aisle? Well, first of all, because back then Walmart wasn't dominating everything. There was a few Walmarts here and there. And so you had to go to Kmart. You had to go to these different places, or the mall, Radio Shack. And again, they would push these Atari console systems, and of course later Nintendo, they would push them towards the boys section of the toy store. Looking back here, because in the comments, Big Frog says that he likes getting coal for Christmas. Don't we all? Dennis Jackson says, hello, everybody. We are back. Good to have you back, Dennis, as always. Billy Strong's Adventure says, Big Frog, barbecue cooking, switches burn, good too. Gary Millwood says, I played with mine till it died, but it was made well and lasted for years. Juan Thomas says, having a blizzard right now, and I'm loving it, and I'm jealous. I'm jealous. I've checked the 2-week weather. I check it almost every day to say, okay, when is our snow? Because the first year we lived here, we had snow all the time. You remember the videos. To go back to 2018 and then into the turnover to 2019, we had snow all the time. It was great. I don't see snow on the horizon at all. There's a big system that's coming out from Canada right now, but it looks like it's going to go over us and even stall perhaps over West Virginia. And it's a big system. Dennis Jackson says, I just gave my grandson one of the old Atari games we found in the back of the closet. I bet it still works. I bet it still works. You think about it, your phone has more power than probably 50 billion Ataris. It's insane. So yeah, Atari changed everything. But after Atari, you have the Rubik's Cube. It's not that I can't figure a Rubik's Cube out. Everybody can figure a Rubik's Cube out. That's not the big deal. I just don't see the point in it. And then I feel stupid because I feel like I'm missing something. Like smart people love Rubik's Cubes and I don't. So something's wrong. Something's wrong with me. So we're continuing to read on. The Lego train, which I did not have and don't know about it. It came out too in the late 70s. And then, or excuse me, the 80s. And then you get into some different kind of stuff. The BMX bike kind of was it was one of those other revolutionary toys that came out. I didn't quite understand why it was such a big deal because I thought we always had bikes. But I think the brand BMX, because when I was a kid, you wanted Mongoose, BMX. They had the different name brands. And it became important to have the right name brand. And I think that has something to do with why that was such an important gift that Christmas, because it was a BMX. Bikes were, I still see kids riding bicycles, but not like we did when we were kids. And so it's one of those rocking chair discussions, you know, back in my day, we used to do this, but I don't see it. But maybe I'm just not in the right place. If you look around YouTube, you see all kinds of biking channels where they're amazing. And sometimes I think it's because there's no such thing as a casual bike rider. I mean, when I was a kid, you rode your bike everywhere. You want to go to your friend's house, you ride your bike. And now parents take kids, you know, there's safety issues and things like that. So nobody rides their bike like they used to, you know, so it's different. Like if you want to be a BMX champion, then that's what you focus on. You go and do that on Saturdays, but it's not casual transportation like it used to be. I might be crazy on that. Correct me here in the comments. Really, Billy? Billy just said, I'm hearing snow in Northern Virginia next Wednesday. I haven't heard. I heard what the Weather Channel said. I saw like 40% or something like that, but I don't see anything like, major snowstorm, 6, 7, 8 inches. I don't see anything like that. I did see like a flurry or two, but I'm not seeing. In Northern Virginia, that's not here. I want to hear. Northern Virginia isn't even Virginia, and I don't want to get into that, but I learned a lot a few weeks ago. Northern Virginia is not really Virginia. Some people around here would like to see Northern Virginia have its own state. I'm just saying, there's talk. There's talk. Strong's Adventure says, I had a red line, and it was a Christmas and birthday gift. Still got it. I remember red line. Walt Thomas says, I remember the Stingray with banana seats and Vroom elect motors for your bike. We had Vroom. Like, there were kids that did the Vroom, the little thing that made it sound cool. And banana seats were more comfortable. Let's be real. Let's be honest. They were more comfortable. 1983 or 84 came the Cabbage Patch Dolls. I witnessed, because we lived in Michigan at the time, and I witnessed a practical riot breakout over Cabbage Patch Dolls. They were huge, and they were the ugliest thing ever made. And the fact that it was so big, I get it, because it's trendy. I remember my aunt, because we spent just about every Christmas together. The one that I was talking about earlier, she's 18 months older than me. We're really close. That's what she wanted. She wanted a Cabbage Patch doll, and she got one. Cabbage Patch Dolls for everyone. It was a Cabbage Patch Christmas. For me, it was Star Wars, of course. But for everyone else, it was Cabbage Patch. Transformers came out the next year, and they were the rage. But they couldn't stay the rage long, because the next video game console came out. And again, Revolution, the Nintendo. Now listen, if you liked Atari, like Strong's was saying earlier, Billy over at Strong's Adventure was saying earlier, Atari basically ended because an overinvestment into a game based on E.T. that was nothing like E.T. The graphics were terrible. The plot of the game was practically useless, and they sunk a lot of money into it, and it hurt Atari. The problem, too, is that Atari didn't have time to rebound because Nintendo was the real deal. Nintendo graphics were so much better. The games that they offered were so much better. Billy at Strong's Adventure says they had people fist fighting in the stores over Cabbage Patch Dolls. Yeah, I remember that well. It was like it's yesterday. I remember that so well. It's like I didn't get it. Next year came laser tag. I remember when laser tag came out, I was so impressed. Parents were impressed. But if you remember, some kids got in trouble. Shots were fired because they're running around the neighborhood with guns that make sounds. They're fake guns, and they shoot out lasers. I'm doing this all night. I'm just going to keep doing this. They shot lasers, but it was revolutionary. I remember everybody was just so into that. Dennis Jackson says, destroyed a lot of valuable baseball cards doing that. Yes, yeah, they did. Yes, they did. Laser tag. Then you had some video games or you had some another game come out. You had Uno, which was a big deal years before. And then in the 80s, early 90s, you have Jenga. It was late 80s, excuse me. Jenga, the game Jenga comes out, and I remember the commercial for Jenga. People go Jenga. Remember that? Anybody? Want me to do that again? You're wanting me to do that again, aren't you? Jenga. That's another game that frustrates me. It's like Operation. I'll have a nervous breakdown playing a game like that. It's like you need to take medicine to play a game like that. Caden says, I'm back. Remember me? I do, Caden. Word, welcome. Word, welcome. You have Jenga, and then the next year, 1989, a wonderful, wonderful year. In 1989, Game Boys came out. When I go back and look at the original Game Boy, I'm like, this was a big deal, but it was huge because it was handheld. Now listen, if you go back in time to like 81, they had like this handheld football game that was awesome. Okay, if you remember that for its time, you had these little dashes that moved and it made beeping sounds, and it was state of the art. It was amazing. You flash forward 15 years, and all of a sudden you have this game in your hand that's almost like the video game that you play at home. Almost, but it wasn't quite. And to me, I had this thing where I kept going, we're just not there yet. Like I never got bought into, and I was getting older. I was like 15 in 1989. So I was looking at it and I was like, But a lot of my friends had it. A lot of my friends have it. Elizabeth Scholl said, no, Battleship was my game. We talked about that earlier. Battleship was awesome. Battleship was awesome. Matter of fact, we found out, I think it was Billy at Strong's Adventure, he has it on his phone, and immediately following this live stream, I'm going to go download Battleship to my phone. I did not know that was a thing. Now I do, and I'm glad. So Elizabeth, you can always, by the way, welcome, but you can always download it. Strong's Adventure says, I used my dad's Uno cards for that Gary Millwood. That's hilarious. Game Boys. Then came Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And by this time, I was getting a little older, and most of you probably were too, or some of you probably were too. And I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to that. A few years later, Super Nintendo comes out. Super Nintendo. This may not mean anything to you guys, but the guys in the college, in the dorm rooms, they had the Super Nintendo, and then I didn't have one. I'd stopped at the regular Nintendo. But the Super Nintendo, it would blow my mind when I would watch people play it. Now, I did play it with friends and stuff like that, and we played a lot. Football games and I think it's called KI, Killer Instincts, wonderful game. And we would play, and it was a lot of fun, and the graphics were amazing. It just drew you in. It was like the video games were arriving. I mean, it was there. But what was missing is the interactive aspect that they have now. And I made a video, wasn't seen by too many people. I think it has less than 100 views or right at 100 views. And the title of the video is this a gaming channel? And really what it was is a discussion about gaming, just the gaming industry, online, streaming, live play. Because I didn't get it till I just joined my son on a live stream, just sat with him and watched him. And it is social, it is interactive, and the graphics are amazing. You are sucked right into the action. I mean, you are there. And so we had a discussion about that. And actually, I think it has limited monetization, which means it doesn't get distributed as much because of a controversial topic. Really, I have no idea. I don't understand everything. I don't claim to. It was just crazy. I didn't understand it, why that was possible. The next year, you had the Barbie Dream House. Anybody? Barbie Dream House? The Barbie Dream House would have been cool if it could have been a place like for your Star Wars action figures to hide out before like the baddies came and they had a big war. And you could put firecrackers up. I'm just kidding, sort of. The Barbie Dream House. The next year, you had Power Rangers. Now, Power Rangers had lasting effects because my son grew up with Power Rangers. I think everybody in our house, Anna, Nathan, and Crystal, all of them played Power Rangers at some point. So Power Rangers had some staying power. They were a big hit at that Christmas, and then they just got bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm looking, if we can ever get cinemas opened again, I'm looking for them to reboot Power Rangers if they haven't decided to do that already. Then we get into some weird toy crazes. Beanie Babies. Really, I never got it. I never understood it, the craze. People went nuts over Beanie Babies. And then this one that is the grossest toy ever. I made fun of this till I was blue in the face, and that's a Tickle Me Elmo. Gross toy. Never understood that. Dennis Jackson says, what about the Easy Bake Oven I had to get for my daughter? We talked about Easy Bake Ovens at the very beginning of the show. It was the first toy that we covered, and yeah, they're still around. They are still around. We were just talking about how back in the day, though, when you made something in one, the stuff was nasty. I don't know if it's still like that because they still make Easy Bake Ovens. Billy is saying, I remember that. I'm sure you're referring to the Tickle Me Elmo. Just weird on every possible level that I won't discuss on this channel. Just so weird. Elizabeth says, my kids' school said no Power Rangers, and it just made it more desirable for the kids, of course. Right? Right? I don't get some of the logic in some things. You're not going to change. Moving on. I get you. I hear you. After the Tickle Me Elmo, the next thing that came out, again, I remember this for my own kids because it had some staying power, was the Razor scooter. You just scooted around on it. You stand, it's like old-fashioned scooter. You stand on it, you kick around with one leg, and now they have scooters that are powered because I made a video about it, and I ride all around Harrisonburg, and they're pretty successful. They've come back a little bit. The pandemic has them mostly shut down, but you do see them around town, just not as many. And so I can't say that it's actually affordable to use one of those motorized scooters for your way of transportation around a metropolitan area, unless you bought your own. You'd need to buy your own. Then it might be affordable and pay off. So the Razor scooter was huge. Elizabeth said the kids loved the Beanie Babies, and so did Grandma. I don't know how many they had, but and I understand trends. Like trends happen. Beanie Baby, it was a trend. But I'm just saying, if you examine it, they're just stuffed little. It's just like fabric, just stuffed in there. And I don't know. I just kept thinking this is crazy. Next thing that came out after the Razor scooter one Christmas was the Nintendo DS. My kids had all of them. I think had a DS, and it was amazing. Either that or just Nathan had one. I don't remember, but the DS was important. Did everybody have one? Everybody had a DS, and it was a big deal because they exchanged games and played different games, and it was a big deal. If you have ever seen these games, and this is when I started realizing video games were becoming, we were a step closer to virtual reality, and that was pretty cool. And of course, the next year, the Xbox 360, and now Christmas is just different. Christmas is so different than it used to be because so much of what we consume in entertainment is online. My son, I always use him as the example for this because I was a boy too. Yeah, Elizabeth says that the DS, it was big. Yeah, it was huge. The DS was huge. When we would go anywhere, I mean, and we would go to the mountains a lot, obviously. I mean, if you watch our channel, we would go to the mountains a lot. We did that with our kids. And what's so awesome is they still go to the mountains. They still appreciate going to the mountains and seeing God's creation and all that stuff. So we'd go to the mountains, but getting to the mountains, you know, it take you an hour and a half to get where you're going, maybe 2. And so that'd be a long drive. So your kids are going to get an hour nap in there. But the DS time was important, you know, and it was important. It was also something you could give time out with. Like if they were beating each other up and we caught them, because most of the time they did and we didn't catch them. But let's say they were beating each other up. You could take one of the games, like you're grounded for this for 1 hour or something like that. Juan Thomas said, I had an e-bike about 6 years ago. They go about 20 miles per hour and 30 miles down the road. That's not terrible. That's not terrible. Mark, good to see you. My sister was unsuccessful at offing me with her Easy Bake Oven products. She had more success with Jack's in the bathtub and tug of war with my rope belt. Long story. For some reason, I channeled that whole event, and I don't know why, but I just saw all of that going down because I have 3 kids, and it was just like, oh, okay. I don't know what it is with kids that it's like you have to learn how to get along. You know, you have to learn how to participate, learn how to share, and all that. It takes time, and in that process, there's going to be wars. You know, especially with me. I was an only child. I'm a little ashamed of being an only child, but I couldn't help it. But you got to admit, if you're an only child, you're different to begin with. And your friends and your peers have to kind of help you understand it isn't all about you. It isn't all about you. So, yeah, only children, I always feel sorry for them. I always tell the parents, you don't have a kid, you have a pet. You don't have kids till you have more than 2. Then you have kids. That sounds mean, though, but I don't mean it mean. Mark says, it's okay. I got her to knock herself out. Kids at Christmas, it's insane. I believe that the way technology is going, I think most of what we're going to do at Christmas is going to change tremendously. I hate it that it's going to change tremendously, but I think a lot of the toy exchanges, and the reason why is because so much of what we do is online. And virtual reality, we're getting closer and closer to what I call real virtual reality. To me, real virtual reality isn't wearing a headset. I know it sounds crazy, but it's going into some type of arena, and whatever you look at, like let's say your game is on the ocean or in the sand or whatever, that is what it looks and feels like, temperature and all. That's when I think we're going to arrive at virtual reality. And I don't think we're a long way away from that. That's scary, but I don't think we're that far away from it. Wearing the goggles and stuff takes me out, or, you know, the headset, the headgear, takes me out of the virtual reality. It takes me out of it. It lessens the experience for me. Mark's talking about deep fakes. Yeah, deep fakes, that's a problem. But I don't think deep fakes are going to be an issue at Christmas unless you could deep fake Santa. It's coming. Conspiracy. The Santa Claus conspiracy. That sounds like our next vlog. The Santa Claus conspiracy. How does he do it? What is he hiding? Where is Mrs. Claus all the time? We'll answer those questions. It's going to be great. I'm going to write that down. The Santa Claus. What are we going to call it? The Santa Claus. Santa Claus deep fake. There you go. Santa Claus deep fake. is that's not really Santa, man. That's not really Santa. When I was a kid, I had all these theories about Santa. D-Lo, she's making cookies. Duh. Okay, maybe she is. Good to see you, by the way, D-Lo. Maybe she's making cookies. I don't know that. I have no proof that she's making cookies. I have no proof. It may be that she wants us to think that we're making cookies. Look, I haven't done all my research here, but I did watch Tim Pool and Alex Jones go at it last night and just talk, and everything was going. So I'm ready for some full-blown Santa Claus conspiracy theories. Gary Millwood says, Bill, I remember waiting for a big box so we can make a fort or a spaceship or a castle. Now we're talking. We used our imagination. That is something that kids don't use much anymore. Gary, I've said that a billion times. And don't think I'm just trying to keep the conversation going by disagreeing, because I agree with you. However, they have different tools to use their imagination. My son pointed this out to me. They edit things. In other words, they'll have a sword fight, let's say, a big sword fight down at mom's house down in the basement. This is when they were younger. Of course, they would probably still do this because they know how to do it better now. And they would go back, they would film this sword fight and this whole stage production, and they go back in with special effects, and they had lightsabers and sound effects and everything else. If you ever watch a group of kids play Minecraft on the computer, it is all imagination. It's just a different tool. It's the tools that we're using today in society. But I'm not necessarily okay with that because it seems so superficial to me. But they are using their imagination. I've got to give it to them. They are using their imagination, and I wouldn't want to offend anyone. But I still agree with you, Gary, that something is missing. I don't know. It's hard for me because I'm using my son in all these examples. So it's hard for me to separate who he is, because my son has been working on cars since I think he was 9, and building stuff and doing this, and he did that. But he was the exception. Most of his friends, that's not what they were doing. They were computer oriented on everything. Nathan was an exception. One of his friends, Noah, they were the exceptions. They ran around. They were still using their imagination, playing in the woods, because we lived on a bunch of acres surrounded by a forest, and so they were always in the woods. Nathan learned to throw a hatchet. Nathan had a bull whip that he learned to use. I mean, and they did all kinds of stuff like that. But they also had this other thing. By the way, if you're still in here, I would really appreciate it if you would click that like button. It really helps. And every comment that you make, it assists me in this adventure here on YouTube, especially going live. If you like our live stuff, when you share, like when we first come on and you share this video, it really helps. I can't tell you how much. So sharing it, making sure that you comment, making sure that you've liked and subscribed, making sure that you've done the hokey pokey and turned yourself around, because that's what it's all about. I do appreciate it, by the way, for you guys hitting that like button. Says Gwen wants to know, is this deep fake? Is this deep fake? She has trust problems. Okay, but who would we be deep faking? I don't look like anybody. This ugly mug is unique, except for my dad. People say I look a lot like my dad, so maybe it's not that unique, but it's unique to me. My kids are angry if they inherit my nose. That's why this channel is called A Nose for Life. Well, the channel's called Bill Marion, but that's why I was intro with A Nose for Life. I figure take out the insults early about my huge nose. Just go ahead and let's get that out of the way. A Nose for Life. Lynn also wants to know where kids' imagination has gone. Again, Mark, I don't think it's gone. I just think they use different tools. If you watch, because I've got to do that. I get to sit with my son and watch him with other young people in Minecraft. That's a big game, and it's interactive. You go in there and you build these worlds, and you just build them however you want them to look. You just do your thing. It is fascinating. It's no different than when we were kids, like when the boys would get up, boys and girls, and you would stage this big war, this big army, and you're setting up all your stuff, except Minecraft is more building stuff. There are bad guys, and there is some minor violence in Minecraft. And I never did understand that, because you got these creepers or something that's walking around killing everybody, and you got to stay away from them. But you can turn that off and just build. And they build these massive worlds with their imagination. So I don't think they use imagination the same way that we did when we were kids, because they have different tools. If you would have given me Minecraft when I was a kid, I would have probably gravitated towards Minecraft. We worked with what we had, I built tree houses, forts. We built forts galore. I mean, when I lived in Michigan, we built a snow fort that that really we needed. I mean, it was huge. We probably needed, a license to build this thing, and it wasn't up to code, but hey, it was awesome. Dennis Jackson says, but we got outside, exercised, and got in the sun. Most kids now don't get off the couch. I can't say that I disagree with that. It's affected everything. It even affects sports. It affects the military. Because when 18-year-olds sign up, man, they're not in the same shape. When I went to basic training at Fort Benning, you had a minority of people, just a few people that when they first got there, they couldn't do the push-ups, they couldn't do the setups, they wore out real quick. You just had a few people. Most of us were fine. You gradually got better, but even when you got there, you could do a little bit. I'd played ball at Union College, so when I got to basic training, I was in decent shape. I lost a bunch of weight like everybody does in basic and AT, but it's very different now because kids are very different now. Juan Thomas says paintballing is good for kids. Yeah. We lived in the mountains, and my son would have his friends over and go to the back mountains for hours. I think paintball is awesome. I really do. It brings out that pattern in all of us. You're wanting to have strategies and stuff. I think it's good because it's exercise. I try to get Nathan, I try to get the girls, this sounds crazy, into hunting, because there's a way in deer hunting that you can stalk as opposed to just tree or still hunting. You can actually use the wind and stalk. And I'd never done it before, and I thought it'd be great if we kind of did that. Kind of was our thing. They didn't buy into that. They did not buy into that. Anna and Nathan, they loved being outside and playing most of the time. They gravitated towards that. When Crystal was younger, she's our youngest. When Crystal was younger, she hated it, but something happened. As she got older, we kept exposing it to her. And now, man, she'll call or send a video or something, and she's hiking or she's got her hammock set up and they're in the middle of nowhere in the woods. I mean, she's very active that way now. I think your kids pick up some of the things that you do introduce to them. So I think it's really on the parents when it comes to the kids' imagination and what the kids do. I don't think it's on the kids, of course, and nobody is actually saying, none of you are saying that, but I think it's on the parents, what you expose them to. And when you show them the reward of the hard work when you're playing hard, I think it pays off. And I think the kids eventually, they make the decisions. They may play video games for 3 days, but 2 days they go out and play and do something else. But yeah, paintballing is cool. Paintballing is cool. I never got into we did laser tag with some friends at a conference thing, choir conference thing way back. And I think it was in Gatlinburg or Pigeon Forge. And I was out of shape real bad, worse than I am now. And I about had a heart attack running around. It was like a laser tag room. You rented out the space, and it was like one team versus another team. And it was tough. I was like, I would do a lot better now. When we're hiking in the woods, I think about that, and I have this idea for this amusement thing that sometime I'd love to share with you guys, just to brainstorm it out. And because I think everybody thinks when I share it, everybody thinks I'm crazy, but it's like a zombie apocalypse, and it's an overnight kind of entertainment thing where it begins where you check in, and then a bus takes you to a location, to a cabin, but there's all kinds of stuff that happens on the bus because things are happening in the world, in the fictional world that you're in. A meteor crashes. The bus does certain things. I mean, it's interactive from start to finish, and it's basically about a 20-hour ordeal. And you get attacked by zombies, and you get to shoot zombies all night from your cabin windows. You get to eat good food, and I had this great idea for it. It's a $1 billion project, though. It's seriously. I worked on this for days. Like, it was one of those things where before I'd go to bed, I'd spend like 30 minutes, pen and paper or my computer, and just jamming out these ideas, how this could possibly work. Elizabeth Schultz says, do you call that 2020? Elizabeth, can you clarify? Because I don't exactly know, because I kind of went on a rabbit trail there. So what are you referring to? Help me out a little bit. And by the way, if you'd like to invest into my zombie parkland theme park, please let me know. I just need a down payment of about $250 million. Big Frog, it would be a blast because it's all basically sensory oriented, to where you're tricking the idea of this theme, this 20-hour plus theme, is tricking your senses. It has uptime and downtime to where it's not all intense, because you'd have people having heart attacks if it's that intense. But it's a story. And basically you go from, and you have to have a lot of property for this, a lot of property. And you would want to do, it would want to be totally professional and not look weird, not look like you're really in the middle of nowhere. Lots of special effects. So you'd have to be at a place too where it's okay to have booms all the time. Your zombie apocalypse. Now I get it. Sorry. Okay, I put it together, Elizabeth. My bad. Do you call that 2020? Man, because I got serious all of a sudden. You said that, and I was like, oh, because 2020 has been so rough. My goodness. And I know personally, for a lot of people, you're feeling the way I am. It's not even dwindling out. It's like 2020 keeps throwing us stuff. I'm excited about 2021, though. If you're not in church, and every time I say this, I watch our numbers drop, but I've got to say it. Get in church, man, because church is going to be awesome. My number just dropped by 1 right then. Get in church because 2021 is going to be awesome. 2021 is going to be awesome. I don't know if it's going to be awesome for everybody else, because the difference between a lot of Christians and other religions is the hope that we have. We have hope. We have hope. We know that we're ambassadors here, that we don't belong here. We belong with the Father, and we know that things aren't right. And so we're strangers in a strange land, and being strangers in a strange land, it's never going to be, quote, right. It can be better, but it can't be right because we don't belong here. We're oddballs. We think differently about politics. We think differently about the world. So I'm not saying that 2021 is going to be an awesome year for everybody outside that still thinks that who you vote for is going to save the day. Because I got news for you. It's not going to matter. It doesn't matter. Our hope can't be in politicians, but you guys know all this, I'm sure. Our hope is not in politicians. Our hope is not in our elected officials at all. Our hope is in Jesus Christ as our Savior. That's what Vlogmas is all about, right? Because not really Vlogmas. We call it Vlogmas. It's Christmas. And Christmas is the celebration of the birth of Christ. I want to say that in every stream now so that we remember what this is for. It's fun to talk about the toys. I love talking about the toys. I love talking about Christmas and nostalgia, Norman Rockwell and stuff. But it's about Christ because he is our hope. So going back to what you said about the zombie apocalypse, so went way over here, but back to the zombie apocalypse, 2020, it sure did feel like it. I mean, let's be real. It's, because they've shut us down here again in Virginia, not the churches because the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Constitution, but they've shut us down here again. And it's heartbreaking because on one hand, you want to help and be a part of the solution. And if nothing else, even if you don't believe in some of the steps that are being taken by the government, you don't agree with it. In order to make the person down the road feel more comfortable, you wear the mask and you do the right thing and all that stuff for their sake, so that they're more comfortable. Because it's being like Christ. Being like Christ is hard. It's not. It's difficult. Because you have your humility and all that stuff. You have to work on that. Gary Millwood says, I think we should all put together a game called 2020. Just think of the possibilities. That exactly. It's a survival board game. You guys probably watched the series Lost. I think it was one of the best made television series ever. I know the ending was tough. It left mixed opinions, but the series itself, the character development was phenomenal. I have almost felt like we're in Lost, like zombie apocalypse, Elizabeth, that kind of thing, and the show Lost, where you have these flashbacks and flash forwards. But it still doesn't make a lot of sense. Mark says, thank you for connecting the truth of Christmas. Well, you're welcome. you're welcome. But you know what? He is the reason for the season, and it's important. Jesus never wore a face diaper. Well, he never wore a face mask that way, but he wore a shroud over his face, cover his face sometimes. He didn't wear one, but at the same time, he talks about offense in Matthew 18, and and being careful about offending our brothers and sisters, because there are brothers and sisters, even if they're not reconciled to God through Christ, they're still our brothers and sisters because He made us all. And if somebody's angry or upset because you're not wanting to wear a mask at Walmart, it's the Christ in us that says, "Put a mask on. It's not going to kill you. It's uncomfortable. It's miserable." But put it on because it's not going to hurt you, and it makes them feel better. It keeps people. The way I say it is like this: it keeps the peace. It keeps the peace. Now, where do we draw the line? That's a whole different subject. That's a whole different, and this isn't really it goes into political aspect. I'm trying to avoid that as best I can, but it does. Elizabeth Scholl, murder hornets. Murder hornets. I've just decided with your comment, murder hornets are going into my zombie apocalypse theme park. I never thought of that before, but the sound of murder murder hornets somehow, and maybe that's a threat. Interesting. That is the scariest thing I've ever seen when they showed the excerpt on YouTube about these murder hornets, because I didn't know what they were, so I looked it up and I was like, oh my gosh, that is terrifying. Looking here at the comments, Gary Millwood says, every conversation should end with the love of Jesus Christ. I totally agree. Because he loves us. What's cool is people say John 3:16 all the time, and you may have heard me say this on a different vlog. People say John 3:16 constantly, but they miss the first part. For God so loved the world, everybody. He loved everybody. Everything about, he loved it. He loved us. He loved the good people, the bad people, the middle people, the cons, the prisoners, the murderers. He loved everybody so much that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever shall believe in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. That is, it's huge to realize that God comes to us not in a position of judgment, but from a position of love. That's important to remember. Big Frog says, murder hornets are scary in person. I've never seen one in person. I've seen them, on YouTube and stuff. If I see one in person, I'm going to run. I'm serious. Wasps and hornets scare me anyway. Bumblebees don't, because they're like making their honey. They really don't want to mess with you unless you make them real mad, or if the hive has gone bad or whatever. But they're making honey, and there's something so awesome about that, But hornets are mean. They're just mean. They're vindictive. It's like they have a memory of you. Big Frog says, you can hear them from 30 feet. Oh, you're kidding me. 30 feet away, you can hear those things? It's like an Apache helicopter, Sean Adventure says, I have doubts about 6 of those pins. I'm not sure what he's talking about. We'll go with it. By the way, my tree is not leaning. That is an illusion. Every time I look back at the screen and I see it, it looks like it's tilted, but it's not. Somehow that's an illusion. I'm not really sure. Well, guys, listen, it's been awesome. We've been on here an hour. Your input, your feedback, your conversation is absolutely precious. Please don't stop. I'm always me on these live chats. This is who I am, and the conversation kind of works that way. So I hope you found a place that you've enjoyed this. If you have thoughts and ideas about something to talk about on these live streams, if you want to participate and be a part of this situation, we'd love to know. Go to our Facebook page at Bill Marion Life. Real easy, at Bill Marion Life. Send me a message through there. Send me a message, an inbox message. Talk to us. Let us know your ideas. The idea to do this vlog came from my dear mother. She called me and she said, you need to do a video about toys. And I thought about it because it's possible that this video gets demonetized and they do away with the chat because of toys. If you know anything about what happened in YouTube in the past couple of years, you'll understand why. So I tried to cover that. But nevertheless, it was a great topic and a great conversation. So if you have ideas, I'd love to hear them. Looking through the comments here, making sure I didn't miss anybody. Guys, it's been awesome. Make sure you hit the like button on the way out. I will see you probably tomorrow night. That's what we're hoping for. You guys be blessed, and I'll see you next time.